Hey guys, it's Superior and welcome to Python tutorial number 29. In this tutorial we're going to be looking at our first conditional statement, and that is the if statement in Python. The if statement commonly seen throughout pretty much every single programming language. Even binary has it. It's just in zeros and ones. Now the if statement works by it receives an expression, and it has to evaluate that expression to either true or false. It has to be one or the other. You might remember this. I can't remember exactly. I think we did cover it, but if we did, it would have been back when we first discussed variables at the beginning of the series. If we didn't, that's fine. It's easy to pick up on anyway. But anyway, it has to evaluate that expression to either a true or a false value, and all numbers evaluate to true or false. Pretty much everything evaluates to a true or false value in Python, and that's what's great, because it means we can put almost anything as an expression into the if statement, and we'll still get some result. Now let's start out with some really simple ones. We're going to create a variable. We'll just call it var1, and we're going to assign it a value of hello world. Okay. Now let's check if this value is a true or false value. Okay. The way we do this is, like I said, with the if statement. The way we construct the if statement is like this. We simply type the word if, and that's a keyword, as you can see it's highlighted. And then we type the variable we want to talk about, or it could be a variable, or it could just be an actual value. So I could type, instead of var1, I could say actually type the string hello world, which will basically be the same thing, because var1 contains this string anyway. But we'll go back to var1 just because we're going to be using variables more than literals in if statements, and we can say if var1, and we'll just use that as our expression, and then we'll say and then you need to type a colon, and then when you press enter, if you're not using the idle, if you're just using a text editor, you actually need to indent a tab, or not even a tab, but just at least a space, because Python operates in blocks, and basically the way it's able to define between one block and the other is by white space, and so you have to have some white space after this colon. And if you want, for everything that you want to be in this if statement, it has to have the same amount of white space before it. So now everything that comes now has to have, in what I'm doing, it has to be a tab, because I've just done a tab's length. You can see that's a tab. But if you're doing it with spaces, it has to be the same amount of spaces, basically. Anyway, anything that comes after this colon and is indented in the same block will be executed if var1 evaluates to a true value. So if it evaluates to false, none of this which has been indented will be executed. We're just going to say something really simple. We're going to say print var1. Let's press enter. You have to press it twice in the idle just to get it to run. And we can see it printed out hello world, which was the value inside var1, which must mean that var1 is a true value. Okay? Let's try changing this up. Let's try reassigning var1 to just an empty string, and we'll run the same thing. We'll say print true this time instead, and this time we get nothing. Okay, so clearly var1 has evaluated to a false value, and that's what an empty string is. An empty string is a false value. Let's try this one. Okay, now there's a space in there, but what we want to try and see is, does Python consider a space to be still, even if it's just a space in the string, to still be false, or will it evaluate it to true? Let's check. We'll print true again if it's true. and it evaluates it to true, because although to us it looks like there's nothing in this string, Python sees a space, and obviously in the machine code it's all binary basically, so it's all represented by zeros and ones, and a space is a sequence of zeros and ones, whereas nothing is no zeros and ones. So obviously if there's a sequence of zeros and ones, something has to be true, so therefore we get a true value, and we got printed out true. Okay, let's do this same thing with numbers. We'll try 0 at first. I'm sure you can all sense what's going to be the outcome. Of course we get nothing, because 0 is a false value. Nothing, in terms of numbers, evaluates to a false value. Let's change it up. Let's change this to a positive number. We'll say if var1 print true, and we get true because 40 is not nothing, therefore it has to be true. Now here's a tricky one. Let's see if you can call this one. We'll say var1 equals minus 450. Now what do you think is going to happen? Let's say print true again if it's true, and we get a true value, because minus 450 in terms of machine code is something. Remember how I was talking about this just before with the strings? Minus 450 is a series of zeros and ones, therefore it must evaluate to true in terms of machine code, and in terms of non-machine code as well, in terms of pure writing, like we can see here. So minus values still evaluate to true, so that's something you really want to remember, because you don't want to mess that up. It can be really confusing. And finally, there's the obvious ones. We have the keywords true and false. Okay, let's try this. Obviously we get true. If we change it back to false, these have to be capitalized, by the way. Oops. Okay, print. And we get nothing. Okay. I'm gonna call this part 1, and we'll continue part 2 after. Actually, this might just, we'll say the next tutorial will be number 30, but it will be like a series, sort of a mini series. So that was our first look at if statements. In the next, we'll be looking at conditional operators inside the expressions. Okay. For now, guys, over and out. Oh, and please remember to rate and comment and subscribe. Thanks.